The knocking. It was just past midnight when I heard the knocking. Slow, deliberate knocks on my front door. I froze, heart pounding. I wasn't expecting anyone. I waited, but when I looked through the peephole, no one was there. Nothing. Just the empty porch, bathed in moonlight. I opened the door slowly, stepping outside. The air felt heavy, thick, wrong. A cold breeze brushed past me, carrying something dark. Then I heard it, a whisper, soft, barely audible. My name. I spun around. No one. I slammed the door shut, trying to shake the unease. But then it opened on its own, creaking wide as if someone had just stepped inside. The door slammed shut again hard. I stood frozen, heart racing. And then, from the shadows, I heard it. A low, guttural laugh, not human, cold, hollow. I looked toward the corner of the room. A shadow moved, shifting, twisting, almost alive. It laughed again, closer this time. I froze, a terrible feeling washing over me. Something was inside with me. The door creaked and moved on its own, sliding slowly open and then shutting tight again. The air grew thick, cold, and heavy, filled with pure evil. I turned to the hallway mirror. There it was, an evil creature staring back at me, eyes glowing with darkness. But when I spun around to look in the room itself, there was nothing there. Only silence. Fear took over. I ran to my car and drove away. I don't know if it followed me or if it's still waiting behind that mirror. On a stormy October night, the last bus of Route 66 pulled into a remote stop just outside a forgotten town. Only one passenger remained, Lena, a college student heading home after visiting her grandmother. She was drowsy, lulled by the sound of rain against the windows when the bus driver called out, "End of the line." Confused, Lena looked around. The bus had stopped in front of a dense forest. No lights, no signs, no road ahead. "This isn't my stop," she muttered. The driver didn't respond. He just stared ahead, motionless. Lena stepped off the bus, hoping to get a signal on her phone. As soon as her feet touched the ground, the door hissed shut behind her and the bus drove off into the darkness. No headlights, no sound. Alone now, Lena turned toward the woods, her phone's flashlight barely cutting through the thick mist. That's when she saw it. A figure in white, standing motionless among the trees, its face veiled, hands clasped. It didn't move. Not until she did. With every step Lena took backward, the figure stepped forward. 1, 2, 3. She turned to run back toward the road, but it was gone, replaced by gnarled trees that hadn't been there moments ago. She screamed, but the fog swallowed her voice. The last thing Lena saw was the figure raising a pale hand and pointing behind her. She turned. A second figure stood there, this one grinning with a stitched mouth and hollow eyes. Lena was never found. And the next night, the bus on Route 66 picked up a new passenger, wearing a veil, dressed in white. She never spoke, never moved, but she always smiled. They were lost. The trail had long vanished beneath their feet. Lena and Mark had been hiking since late afternoon, but the forest had twisted behind them until everything looked the same. As night fell, the trees grew closer. The air changed, heavier, colder. It wasn't just darkness, it was isolation. No signal, no stars. The forest felt infinite. They wandered blindly, exhaustion setting into their bones. Then, through the branches and fog, they saw it. A cabin. It sat slouched against the earth, almost swallowed by the forest floor. The wood was dark, waterlogged from age. Vines curled across the walls like veins. The windows were black holes. The door was shut but sagged on its frame. No path led to it. No signs of life. It looked like no one had been here in decades, but there was nowhere else to go. Inside, the air was thick and cold. The smell of mildew and something harder to name lingered in the walls. The room was small, just a bed with rotting sheets, a dead fireplace, a crooked wooden chair turned slightly toward the wall. The kind of place that felt like it had been left behind, or hidden. They sat in silence, too tired to talk, too uneasy to sleep. Then, thud. A single heavy footstep above them. Then another. The wood of the roof creaked under the weight. Not quickly, slowly. Whatever it was, it moved like it had all the time in the world. Mark looked up, swallowing hard. Lena didn't speak. More footsteps, back and forth, And then, bang, 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 bang! Three deafening knocks against the front door. Neither of them moved. The sound echoed long after it ended. No voice followed, no movement outside. Just silence. Time passed, but it felt warped. Eventually, they both lay down on the bed, though neither dared close their eyes for long. Later, in the deepest part of the night, Lena woke. She couldn't move. Her body was frozen, her limbs locked. But her eyes were wide open, and across the room something was standing in the dark. She didn't know how long it had been there. It was tall, motionless, and wrong. Not a man, not a shadow, something unhuman. Its outline blurred in the dark, like the cabin rejected the light around it. It didn't breathe, it didn't blink, it only watched. Mark, she whispered, barely audible. He stirred, sat up, turned, and saw it too. They both froze. The shape didn't vanish. It was closer now, between them and the door. And in that terrible moment, they realized something. The knocks hadn't been a warning. They'd been an invitation, and in their sleep, without meaning to, they had answered. The room grew colder. Something shifted in the dark, a movement not of legs or limbs, but of presence. The space felt distorted, like time and gravity were folding in the wrong direction. Lena stood. Mark followed. They didn't speak. They just ran. Through the door, into the forest. Margaret still couldn't believe how cheap the place was. A charming old house tucked away on a quiet road, surrounded by woods and silence. The listing said motivated seller. She hadn't asked why. She was just relieved to have finally found a home of her own. The first night felt peaceful. She unpacked a few boxes, poured a glass of wine, and went to bed early, wrapped in blankets and a rare calm. But around 2 a.m., something changed. She woke suddenly, not to a noise, but to a feeling. The air in the room had turned dark, thick and heavier than anything natural. It wasn't just quiet. It was suffocating, like the walls themselves were closing in, carrying a cold, evil presence that pressed down on her chest. Her heart pounded as she scanned the room. Then she saw it. A shadow in the closet. Tall, evil, almost demonic in shape. It didn't move, but the darkness around it seemed alive, pulsing with something malevolent. It was waiting, watching. Frozen, Margaret reached for her phone on the nightstand, but the screen stayed black. The battery was dead, though she was sure it had been charged before sleep. Then came the noise. A deep, heavy thud from inside the closet. Not a creak, not something falling. A step, deliberate. The room grew colder still. The shadow shifted slightly, like it knew she was awake. That was all Margaret needed. She bolted out of bed, ran down the stairs and out into the cold night, barefoot on the wet grass, heart hammering. Only then did she dare to look back. The bedroom light was on, and in the window, just behind the thin curtain, the shadow stood, still watching. Margaret never returned inside. She never told anyone what she saw. But the house? Every few weeks, it goes back on the market. Cheap, waiting. The basement door. When David inherited the farmhouse from an uncle he'd never met, it felt like fate. Quiet, alone, untouched for years, just the kind of place he needed to start fresh. But there was one thing he couldn't ignore. At the end of a narrow hallway sat a thick wooden door. It wasn't just locked. It was chained shut with 6 heavy padlocks and nailed closed, with rusted iron spikes, each one hammered deep into the frame like someone had been trying to hold something in. The estate lawyer offered no real explanation, only a warning. Your uncle said, never open the basement, no matter what you hear. David tried to forget about it, but on the 4th night, just past midnight, the noises started. Soft tapping, then dragging, then breathing. Thick, ragged breathing, like something too big for lungs, waiting in the dark. By the end of the week, the hallway lights wouldn't stay on. The air around the door grew colder, dense with the scent of burnt metal and rot. And every night from behind the door, a deep voice whispered in a rasp like grinding stones, "Let me in or come down." Then one night, David found the chains lying on the floor. The padlocks snapped, the nails ripped free, sticking up like twisted fingers. The door creaked open slowly. He should have run, but something was calling to him. A pressure behind his eyes, a pull inside his chest. He picked up a flashlight and stepped inside. The basement was cold and damp, the air thick like he'd walked underwater. The stone walls were covered in strange carved symbols, worn, old, vibrating with something unseen, and at the far end of the room, an old standing mirror. Dusty, cracked, the kind of thing you forget, but feel watching you. David approached. His breath caught in his throat. His reflection wasn't his. It was smiling. Then it moved, not in sync, as if the figure inside the mirror had been waiting for him to look. And behind him, in the mirror's glass, something else stood. Tall, twisted, shadow black and slick like burned flesh. Its head was crowned with jagged horns, and its eyes burned like coals in a dead furnace. The thing's limbs bent wrong, unhuman, demonic, and its mouth opened far too wide. Before David could turn, it stepped out of the mirror, already fully in the room with him. It whispered, right behind him, "You open the way. Now you see me." Then it lunged. The basement door slammed shut, and David was never seen again. But late at night, locals say the farmhouse isn't truly abandoned. Some claim that if you pass by just after midnight, you can hear the sound of nails being hammered into wood, over and over, as if something inside is being sealed away again. The 13th floor, Demon's Reach. I used to work late. A lot. Everyone left by 6. I was usually the last one there, neck deep in reports no one cared about, but everyone expected finished. There was this rumor in the office about the 13th floor. Technically, it doesn't exist. The elevator buttons skip straight from 12 to 14, but people say sometimes late at night, the elevator stops there anyway. And if it does, whatever you do, don't step out. Nobody talks about it openly, but the people who've been here longest, they know. You can see it in their eyes. They don't laugh when you bring it up. They just say, if it ever happens to you, pray you're fast enough. Some employees vanished after taking the elevator late. Others quit without explanation. Shaking, pale, refused to speak about it. I didn't believe it until last Thursday. I stayed late. Again, it was past midnight when I got into the elevator. I was half asleep, hit the button for 10, leaned against the wall. Then it stopped early. I looked up and the panel said 13. The doors opened. I don't know why I stepped out. I wasn't thinking. I just did. And instantly, I knew I'd made a mistake. It was cold. Not like AC cold, like death. The air felt wrong, thick and heavy like breathing through water. The hallway was dim. The lights were barely alive, flickering, buzzing, and then silence. I turned to press the elevator button, already closed. No sound, no movement. That's when I heard it. My name, whispered, but it didn't come from a person. It felt like it came from inside my own head. Then I felt something, behind me, watching. I turned, and it was there. Something demonic, tall, twisted, horns curling back like charred bone. Its skin black, cracked like cooled lava. Its eyes weren't red, they were pure darkness, like they absorbed light around them. It moved slowly, each step silent, deliberate, not chasing, hunting. And I felt it deep in my chest. If it touched me, I wouldn't live. Not death, worse, like I'd be taken, erased, replaced by whatever it was. I slammed the elevator button. Nothing. It kept coming, one step then another. No rush. It knew I had nowhere to go. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. My body felt frozen, like its presence alone was draining me. It raised its hand, claws long black, dripping something thick. It got closer, inches now. I could feel the heat of it, smell the sulfur and rot on its breath. Ding! The elevator opened. I dove in and smashed the button. Any button. The door shut just as its fingers grazed the edge of the opening. For a second, I thought it was inside with me, but it wasn't. Not yet. I hit the lobby, ran outside, didn't stop moving until I got home. I quit the next morning, didn't explain, didn't say goodbye, and I never went back. Whatever's on the 13th floor, it doesn't haunt, it hunts, and if it ever touches you, you won't be you anymore.